Peking University, Beijing. A 24-year-old physics student named Deng Xiaoping is being held inside his own department. Red Guards have kept him there for months. They want him to denounce his father. He goes out of a third-floor window, pushed or jumped. Nobody has ever established which. The first hospital refuses to admit him. By the time anyone treats him, the spine injury is permanent. He has used a wheelchair every day since. That year, his father lost every post he held. Within a year, he was sent to a tractor factory in Jiangxi. He filed engine parts by hand at 65. His name was Deng Xiaoping. 9 years later, he was running China. He was never chairman, never president, never premier. Under him, roughly 800 million people rose out of extreme poverty, about 3/4 of all poverty reduction on Earth. In June 1989, he sent the army into Beijing with battlefield ammunition. This is how one man rewrote a fifth of humanity, and why both of those things came from the same decision. Start with what Deng Xiaoping was not. He was never chairman of the Communist Party. He was never president. After 1980, he was never premier either. The one title that mattered was chairman of the Central Military Commission. He held it from 1981 to 1989. It meant he controlled the army. Everything else was negotiable. That was not. The engine parts were not new to him. In 1920, aged 16, he sailed to France on a work-study program. The study collapsed when his money ran out, so he worked. He became a fitter at the Renault plant outside Paris. Later, he made rubber shoe soles at a factory in Chalette-sur-Loing. They fired him in 1923. The note in his company file reads, "Refused to work? Do not take him back." He was 19. He had also met Zhou Enlai. Now here is the part that usually gets left out. By 1956, Deng was General Secretary of the party secretariat. In that job, he ran the machinery of the anti-rightist campaign. Officially, 552,877 people were labeled rightists. Independent estimates run between 1 and 2 million. They lost jobs, went to labor camps, or were exiled for decades. Deng did not order that campaign. Mao did. Deng operated it. Remember that because it happens again. 10 years later, the same apparatus turned on him. He was purged in 1966, recalled in 1973, then purged again in April 1976. Each time he kept his party membership. Mao personally saw to that. 3 falls, 3 returns. He outlived every man who put him down. Then, in September 1976, Mao died and Deng Xiaoping had no job at all. Mao left behind a successor and a note. The successor was Hua Guofeng. In Mao's own handwriting, the note said, "With you in charge, I'm at ease." That note was Hua's entire claim to power. No revolutionary record, no independent base. Just a piece of paper from a dead man. So, he built a doctrine around it. In February 1977, the 3 main party newspapers ran the same editorial. This became known as the 2 whatevers. Whatever policy Chairman Mao decided, they would uphold. Whatever instruction Chairman Mao gave, they would follow. That sounds like loyalty. It was actually a legal argument. If Mao's words were permanently binding, so was Hua's authority. And the Cultural Revolution could never be called a mistake. So how do you fight that without attacking Mao? On May 11th, 1978, a newspaper called Guangming Daily ran an unusual article. The author was a lecturer from Nanjing University. Its title was, "Practice is the sole criterion for testing truth." The argument was simple. You find out whether an idea is correct by testing it in the real world, not by checking it against a quotation. That one sentence did all the work. If practice decides what is true, Mao's words stop being binding. The Cultural Revolution becomes something you are allowed to evaluate. And Hua's piece of paper means nothing. Deng never removed Hua from office. He removed the ground Hua was standing on. That December, the party dropped the slogan that had governed China since 1962. The new priority was economic construction. Hua kept his titles 2 more years, then handed them over. Nobody was arrested. Deng now had a country of 1 billion people. Most of them could not reliably eat. On the evening of November 24, 1978, 18 men met in a mud hut in Anhui. The village was Xiaogang. It had been begging for grain for 20 years. Under the commune system, everybody farmed together and everybody earned the same. Nobody had a reason to work harder. So, the 18 wrote a contract dividing the collective land among their households. This was illegal. Several couldn't write, so they signed with thumbprints. One clause matters more than the rest. If any of them were jailed or executed, the others would raise his children to 18. That is what they thought they were risking. Beijing tells this story often, and it has grown in the telling. It was not signed in blood. It was not even first. 2 other Anhui villages had done it 2 months earlier. But the contract is real. Here is how it worked. Land stayed collectively owned, which kept it legal on paper. Households got the right to farm it. Each owed a fixed quota of grain to the state. Everything above that they kept. That turned a wage into a stake. Farmers had been paid in work points regardless of output. Now the surplus was theirs. Watch what happens. China's grain harvest was 304.8 million tons in 1978. By 1984, it was 407.3 million. A third more food. Same land, same people. Nothing changed except who owned the extra. By 1983, more than 93% of production teams had switched. The commune, created in 1958, was legally extinct by 1985. Then, he did the same to industry. In August 1980, China approved 4 special economic zones: Shenzhen, Zhuhai, Shantou, and Xiamen. Look at where they are. Shenzhen borders Hong Kong, Zhuhai borders Macau. Shantou and Xiamen face Taiwan, ancestral homelands for huge overseas Chinese populations. Deng was not fishing for Western multinationals, he was fishing for Chinese families with money abroad. Inside the zones, the rules changed. Corporate tax dropped to 15%. Foreigners could own a company outright, with no Chinese partner. Shenzhen built China's first labor market. Shenzhen was not a sleepy fishing village. It was a rural county of 314,000 people. Today it holds nearly 18 million. The economics worked. Then, the money started reaching the wrong people. In 1981, China's Gini coefficient was 0.310. Gini measures income inequality. 0 means everyone earns exactly the same. 1 means a single person has everything. At 0.310, China was among the most equal societies on Earth. By 2008, it hit 0.491. That took 1 generation. There was a specific mechanism behind it, and it is the reason 1989 happened. Through the mid-1980s, China ran 2 prices for the same goods. A low state price, set by the plan, a higher market price, set by demand, buy at the state price, sell at the market price. You made money for doing nothing. Access to the state price was not for sale, it was allocated by officials. So the people who got rich fastest were not entrepreneurs. They were officials, and the children of officials. Chinese has a word for it: guandao. Ordinary people watched it happen and knew exactly what they were looking at. Deng had promised that some would get rich first and would then help the rest. What people saw was a particular set of families getting rich first. Because of who their fathers were, that grievance did not stay quiet. In January 1987, Deng forced out the party's general secretary. Xiaogang had been too tolerant of student protests. On April 15, 1989, Xiaogang died of a heart attack. He was 73. Students went to Tiananmen Square to mourn him. Mourning a disgraced official is a very old form of Chinese protest. You cannot be arrested for grief. The crowds did not leave. Be precise about what they wanted, because it was not simply democracy. They asked for press freedom, and they asked officials to publish their incomes and assets. That last demand connects to everything you just heard. On April 26th, the People's Daily called the movement turmoil, an organized conspiracy against the party. The editorial came from Deng's own remarks. That was the turning point. Students who came to mourn were now enemies of the state. The next day, far more came out. On May 13th, hundreds began a hunger strike. Then the timing turned catastrophic. Mikhail Gorbachev arrived on May 15th for the first Soviet summit in 30 years. His welcome ceremony had to be moved out of the square. The world's press had come for Gorbachev. They filmed the students instead. At dawn on May 19th, Zhao Ziyang walked into the square with a megaphone. He told them, "We have come too late." Zhao spent the next 15 years under house arrest. He died in 2005, still confined. Martial law was declared on May 20th. Now notice where these decisions were made. Deng held one post, chairman of the Central Military Commission. He made the calls at his own house with the standing committee summoned to him. No constitutional body voted on any of it. On the night of June 3rd, the army moved in. The worst violence was not in the square. It was at Muxidi in western Beijing. Around 10:30, troops of the 38th Group Army fired battlefield ammunition into crowds. A declassified American embassy cable states it plainly. Most deaths happened on Chang'an Avenue and the surrounding streets. How many died is not known. That is deliberate. Here is the honest range. The Chinese government said 200 to 300, including soldiers. The Tiananmen Mothers, a victims' families group, have verified 202 names. The American embassy estimated 500 to 2,600. Human Rights Watch put it near 2,000. A British ambassador cabled London a figure of 10,000. Those are not competing measurements. That is what remains when a government destroys the record. On June 5th, a man carrying shopping bags stood in front of a column of tanks. The photograph went around the world. Nobody has ever established who he was. One pattern is unmistakable. Arrested students got prison sentences. Arrested workers were far more likely to be executed. On June 9th, Deng addressed the martial law commanders. He mourned the soldiers who had died. He did not mention any civilians. He called the crackdown something that was bound to occur. His stated regret was insufficient ideological education. One city handled it differently. In Shanghai, the party secretary ended the protests without firing on anyone. His name was Jiang Zemin. 2 weeks later, he was running China. On November 9th, 1989, Deng resigned his last position. From that point, he held no office in China at all, and reform stopped. Conservatives blamed the protests on the market experiments. Growth fell from 11.2% in 1988 to 3.9% in 1990. Party newspapers turned on the special economic zones. Then, in December 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved. Conservatives read that as proof that reform destroys communist parties. Deng read it as proof that stagnation does. In January 1992, he was 87 years old and unemployed. He got on a train heading south. At Wuchang, he spent 20 minutes on the platform with local officials. Anyone blocking reform, he said, should go to sleep. His argument was 2 sentences. A planned economy is not the same thing as socialism because capitalism plans too. A market economy is not capitalism because socialism has markets. Now watch how a man with no job made that stick. Beijing's central newspapers refused to report the trip. So, the story broke in Hong Kong first. Then, a Shenzhen paper ran a full account without central approval. The People's Daily followed only afterward. He had used the edge of the country to force the center's hand. On March 29, 1993, the Constitution was amended. 2,848 votes to 8. The word plan was deleted from the founding document of a communist state. Deng Xiaoping died on the 19th of February 1997, aged 92. His will donated his corneas and gave his body to medical research. His ashes were scattered at sea. He left no tomb, deliberately. His last project was making himself unnecessary. He installed Jiang Zemin. Then, he promoted Hu Jintao to the Standing Committee at 49. That marked Hu as the leader after Jiang. Deng chose the successor to his own successor. And in the 1982 Constitution, he wrote a hard limit. No president could serve more than 2 5-year terms, so China could never produce another Mao. On the 11th of March 2018, that clause was deleted. The vote was 2,958 in favor and 2 against. In 2022, Xi Jinping took a 3rd term. No successor was named, there still isn't one. In August 2024, Xi gave a speech marking 120 years since Deng's birth. It did not mention 1989. Deng Xiaoping was flexible about everything except one thing. He changed the crops, he changed the prices, he changed who owned the surplus, he changed the constitution. He let foreigners own Chinese factories outright. None of that was ideology. All of it was method. The single thing he would not negotiate was who holds power. Only the party holds it. Everything else can be tested, reversed, and tested again. That is why both halves of his record came from the same decision. Feeding people made the party stronger. So he fed them. 800 million left extreme poverty. Students in a square threatened the party, so he sent the army. The number of dead is still unknown. He was not a reformer who lost his nerve in 1989. He was doing, in June, what he had done in 1978 and what he had done in 1957. He was protecting the same thing every time. Then he tried to protect it from himself. He wrote the term limits. He designed the succession. He left no tomb and no monument. His son is still alive. Deng Xiaoping is in his 80s and still uses the wheelchair. He spent his career building China's Federation for Disabled People, and it is still there. His father built a rule to stop any one man ruling for life. That lasted 36 years. Deng Xiaoping split Sichuan province in 1985 to solve a governance problem too large for one province to manage. Watch how that same logic, an authority answering directly to Beijing rather than fighting provincial politics, built China's strangest city 12 years later and destroyed the careers of 5 of the officials who tried to run it. Watch, the world's largest city doesn't exist.